Yeah, see, and every time you hit the button, yeah, don't even worry about it because it moves by itself.
My name is Emmy Council, and Uncle Lynn is my hero. I called him a hero ever since I've been old enough to know what happened to him in life.
My name is Doris Battle. I was raised in a community called St. Mary's, right there at the church. It's the area that Mr. Council, I met Mr. Council.
When you Google the Apex Police Department and you start looking at stories and news articles and things, ultimately you're going to land on this story of Mr. Council and what happened here. And it was extremely impactful for me because at the time when I was interviewing for this job, the town had just gone through a cultural assessment of the police department, and it had been all over the news. And there were some troubling things that came out of that cultural assessment, where it identified racial bias, a lot of racial bias inside the police department. So as an outside chief that's coming into this organization to lead this organization, so I'm looking at what's happening in 2021, where the media is highlighting that the department has racial bias issues. Then as I'm doing my research on the department, you go all the way back to the 1950s and you see that this incident happened, which just goes way beyond racial bias, that you had a racist leader of this organization. Then for me, I look at that as I've been given a unique and impactful opportunity to come in here being the first black police chief that this town has ever had, and we're celebrating our 150th year of being in existence this year. To just make sure that my heart is in the right place, and I'm always keeping the past a part of what I look at and how we do and how we can be better in the future.
He has made such an impact on my life. I've always been a humble man. When I was young, he would wear a bandana around his neck. And I asked my mom, I said, why did he have a scarf around his neck? And it was one time that she did say he was hung, he was lynched.
When I was still a little girl, when it first happened, I couldn't get all the ins and outs, but I would hear a little there, and I could tell that something was going on in the family. And so when it was all finally settled and he was back home, it was a glorious time for the whole family. Everybody was praising God for keeping him and from saving him for what had tried happened to him.
My mom was involved in the story. It was 7 of them accused of stealing $100 from a store on 1010 and Holly Springs Road. And that was the cause of the lynching for Mr. Council at the time. He was living in Apex off 64 when they picked him up. Deputy Holmes picked him up from his home that morning, took him to Apex, downtown Apex, to Chief Bagwell's office. And that was the place that Chief Bagwell slapped him so hard that he knocked him off the bench. His head went one way, his hat went another, and he said he had never been hit so hard. Chief,
Who hit you?
Bagwell hit me. Bagwell.
Oh, Bagwell. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
they spent the night there. The next morning, all but 2, I think it was just 2 or 3 of them, was let go. Mr. Council being one of the ones that they kept in jail. It was a trial, and the Council said he spent money for a lawyer, but the lawyer didn't do anything. I guess he was in with the other guys, and he didn't do anything to help him. And so after the trial, they took him back to jail. The next day, I believe, that evening, they took him out to a tree off Hilldale Farm Road, right before Penny Road coming from Holly Springs, and lynched him. Pulled him not too far off the ground, but high enough so he passed out from the lynching, and they dropped him. Before the end, they tried to make him admit that he stole the money, or they stole the money. He would not admit to it. And so they dropped him down. It was muddy around there. And he took him back to jail. The next day they let them go. I believe him and his brother and one of the friends. Like I said, they were teenagers. But we thank God that it could have went the other way.
Trying to make me say something I didn't do.
Trying to make you say you did it.
Yeah. I told him I didn't know no violence.
So who took you to the tree when they were trying to hang you? You remember that?
Yeah, I never been down where Georgia State. I was hung on Thursday. I went to jail on Tuesday. Tried on Wednesday. I was hung on Thursday. I came home this Friday. I was in the Apex.
You know, it's easy for people to say, it's easy for the department to say, well, you know, I didn't do any of those things, or I didn't participate in any of that stuff. And so, you know, it shouldn't be a topic. It shouldn't be anything that we make a big deal of. And that's where the life experiences really come into play, and helping people to understand that, like, Mr. Council is still here. He's still alive. And so regardless if that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago, nobody gets past that traumatic event. And the traumas that we deal with and that we experience, you know, they often stick with us for a lifetime. And so while, you know, nobody that is here today at this police department was a part of what happened to him, at the same time, I look at it as we're all a part of it, because we represent the entity that should have been protecting him from that type of activity. Instead, we were the ones that carried it out. And so, you know, when we talk about history, we talk about the history of law enforcement, that's often where I think, you know, where the crossroads kind of exist in our profession, where we know some of the issues and the challenges that have happened from years past, and those of us that are in a profession that are trying to do the right thing today, we don't want to be associated with it. But then when we look at the landscape nationally, what happens in law enforcement, we just had the Tyree Nichols incident in Memphis, so things that still happen today, and people look at that and they can look at, you know, people here in Apex that are familiar with Mr. Council's story. And while, you know, that may not be happening here in Apex right now, but that's still a sense of trauma for them. And then thinking about, like, well, dang, I remember, you know, if they were alive back then, I remember when this happened with Mr. Council. Or just going back to 2019 when, you know, his story came to light and there was a lot of coverage on it. And it's like, all right, well, man, I just remember a few years ago when Apex Police Department was in the news for, you know, their treatment of minorities or their treatment of black people. And so we never really get past, it's not getting past those stories. It's really about being able to talk about them and have open dialogue and discussion about them, for people to be able to share, like, how they have been impacted by them and how that contributes to their outlook and their thoughts on law enforcement and policing in general, to where we can come in and where we can, you know, be a light in that space and showing people who we are.
Better place. There are a lot of people that came before me that allowed me to have this opportunity to present this coin as the first black mayor of Apex. So it is my honor and pleasure, sir, to present this coin to show our appreciation and honor and respect to you and your contributions to this town. So I want to present to you.
Yes. Yay! All right.
I know you have many of those coins. So this
This is my Chief's coin. And like Mayor Gilbert said, he's the first to sit in his seat as a black male, as I'm the first to sit in my seat as a black male, as a police chief of this organization. And while, although, what happened all those years ago I wasn't a part of, but it's not lost on me being the police chief of this town that I still take on some of those responsibilities and have to make sure that I lead this office and this position, with the honor and integrity that people of this community deserve. And so I want to present you, with this Chief's coin. And also, an apology for me on behalf of this organization of what happened to you all those years ago.
Mr. Council, on behalf of the Wake County Sheriff's Office, I don't have a coin to present to you, but what I do have is love, respect, and honor from the Sheriff's Office and myself as a person for your commitment to truth and your courage to bring truth to the light, to help us be a better profession when it comes to treating people in a lawful, fair, and humane way. History is so important, so that whether it's right or wrong, it has to be documented and it has to be addressed so that moving forward, that we do get it correct. So we thank you for being a part of helping us do our job in a better way and standing tall and represent Apex in this community in the manner that you have. So thank you so much. We're a better people in a better place because of you. Thank you so much. God bless you.
During the time that he was being abused and he wasn't sure, how long he was going, if he was going to survive the situation, how long he was going to actually, how it was going to turn out. He did not see that this was going to be the result. There's a string between family experiences and things that folks have gone through, and as they share them, then it builds a certain strength. And we'll share this with our children and with our grandchildren, and it will continue. And it will continue because it's a good story, a positive story.